Tempt. Romance audiobooks. A safe place to explore your dreams.
Because sometimes you just need a sexy enemies to lovers shifter vampire story. Chapter 1. Alexis Conover was in deep shit. She stood at the window of her expansive two-bedroom condo, staring into the night. The bright lights of Miami glared back at her, twinkling as if they were stars in the overcast sky. The clouds had rolled in earlier that day, perhaps foreshadowing the grim events that had taken place an hour ago. Her father had been furious before he stormed out the front door, slamming it behind him. He wanted her to marry Lycan Garrett, a high-ranking officer in his secret lycan army. Lexi liked Lycan well enough, and he definitely wasn't a chore to look at. But she had one rather large problem. She was infatuated with someone else. A man whose chiseled face was seared into her brain. A man who wasn't a man. The vampire prince, Jordan Windsor. Lexi had met him only once, several years ago when she was in her late 20s, patrolling the street on one of her late-night missions. Against her father's greatest wishes, Lexi preferred protecting her people with force. She was a soldier in the war against the vampires, and felt it much more conducive to kill every last vampire bastard with her own hands if necessary. Her father, Victor, vehemently disagreed, thinking Lexi's main purpose on the planet was to bear an heir for their people. Rubbish. How could one bear an heir if they weren't interested in men as a whole? In her 32 years on the planet, she'd tried to feel desire for any of the plethora of men who'd pursued her. Many of them were handsome and chivalrous, since she was lycan royalty, and she'd even slept with some. But she'd realized long ago her efforts were futile. Sex was a waste of time for her, a stupid practice she no longer employed. Alexis Conover had better things to do with her time than spend it doing something she detested. Some of the men had murmured that she was cold, frigid, an ice queen amongst the other women who would willingly open their legs for the strong, sexy lycan suitors. Fuck them. Lexi knew the truth. There was only one who had the power to quicken her heartbeat and make the slick drip of arousal coat her inner folds. Jordan. All those years ago, she'd first heard his boots against the thick pavement, the steps ominous and heavy. Lexi had twirled around, her black shoulder-length curls snapping around her thin, pale neck. "One more step and I'll gut you," had been her first words to him. Against her advice, he'd stepped into the shallow light that glowed in a beam from the moon above the alley. The ray illuminated his deep green irises, smoldering as his full lips quirked. "You threaten the most powerful vampire on the continent?" he asked, the hint of arrogance in his tone spurring a jolt of anger through her tense body. "I know who you are," she said, eyes narrowed as she lifted the gun secured tightly in her hand and aimed the barrel between his gorgeous eyes. "And your father is the purest vampire left on the planet. You're only a surrogate. Now, I'll give you 5 seconds to run before I blow your brains out." With her thumb, she cocked the pistol. His low-toned chuckle surrounded her, causing her to shiver. Confusion swept through her as she felt a rush of wet arousal between her thighs. The vampire closed his eyes, tilting his face toward the sky. Standing still and quiet, he inhaled a huge breath. "Time's up, asshole," she said, her finger itching to pull the trigger. "I smell it," he murmured. "Smell what?" she asked, entranced by his words for some inexplicable reason. Lowering his head, those emerald eyes locked onto hers. "Your arousal, Alexis." Gaze cemented to hers, he took a step forward, and then another, until the front of his body brushed hers. The leather of his black jacket scraped across the globes of her pale breasts, bare above the neck of her black tank top. Sucking in a breath, she realized that the barrel of the gun was pressed directly into his blackened heart. "Do it," he said, daring her. His warm breath rushed over the exposed skin of her neck and collarbone. "Shoot me. Otherwise, I'll have to disarm you." Lexi scoffed. "Try it, vampire. I'll put a silver bullet straight through your heart." Her words were interrupted by his swift movements as he tried to knock the weapon from her hand. Anticipating the attempt, she grasped the weapon and pistol-whipped him across the face. Jordan grunted in pain, grasping her shoulders with his broad hands and pushing her back against the cold brick wall. Air escaped her lungs in a coarse exhale, pushed from her body by the hard bricks. She struggled against him, but it was no use. He loomed over her, at least a head taller. They fought each other, Jordan furiously working to remove the gun from her grip. He banged her wrist against the stones several times, causing her to cry out in pain. The pistol fell, the clanking sound as it hit the pavement echoing in the alley. Distracted by pain, she didn't notice he'd grabbed her wrists in his firm grip until he lifted them over her head. Jutting his body into hers, he held her prisoner against the wall. "Well, that was annoying. You've got quite a little temper there, princess," he said, arching a raven-black eyebrow. "Don't call me that," she spat, teeth clenched together in fury. "I'd stop struggling if I were you," he warned, the warmth from his thick frame surrounding her as he held her wrists prisoner above her head. "It might have unintended consequences." Staring down into her eyes, he pushed his erection into the juncture of her thighs. Lexi froze, understanding that this large beast of a man was throbbing with desire for her. How could that be? They were the heirs of dynasties that had battled for centuries. Unfortunately, her treacherous body obviously hadn't gotten the memo. Blood pounded furiously in her veins as she panted. Locked in his embrace, the air visible in tiny puffs under the Miami winter sky. "I won't hurt you," he said, green irises roving over her face as he studied her. She felt dissected, like a bug under a microscope. "But take a message to your father. The vampires have lived in the shadows for too long. We will find a way to defeat you. It's only a matter of time." "Lycans will always prevail over you blood-sucking bastards." Spittle flew from her lips as she spoke the words. Inching closer, he touched the tip of his nose to her cheek, causing her to elicit an unconscious moan. "I know, little wolf," he said, his tone soft with almost a hint of sadness. "I feel it too. How strange that our bodies react to each other this way." Closing in, he touched the soft skin of her lips with his, only slightly, and Lexi panted into his open mouth. "What would it be like to suck every last drop of blood from you?" he asked. Ever so gently, he exposed his fangs, dragging the tips across her bottom lip. "Fuck," she whispered, quivering underneath him. I know, he breathed. Extending his tongue, he ran the wet tip over her lip, soothing her where his fangs had lightly scraped. Lost to passion, Lexi offered her tongue, sliding it toward his. Groaning, he swiped over it, sluicing it in wetness. Above her head, he shifted her wrists, firmly grabbing them both in one hand. Sliding the other over her thick hair, he fisted it between his fingers. Drawing back her head, he closed his lips over hers. Lexi whimpered, letting him in, unable to push him away. The growls he sent down her throat while he devoured her only spurred her arousal, causing wetness to gush from her deepest place. He tasted salty, musky, the sweetest taste she'd ever known. Jordan pulled back, resting his forehead upon hers, his breathing labored. You taste like metal, she said, her brain unable to form any other words. My lip is bleeding from where you struck me, he said, his deep voice sounding miles away to her ringing ears. You've got a good arm, princess. Lexi blinked slowly. Once, twice. What the absolute hell was she doing kissing the heir of the vampire throne? Good God, she must have gone insane. Please, she said, tugging at her wrists. Let me go. Those green eyes bore into her, firm and unyielding. I'll let you go, but you know we're not finished here. You're gushing for me, sweetheart. I'm drowning in it. Inhaling deeply, the nostrils of his austere nose flared. I'd rather fuck a human, she snarled. I'll never let you touch me again. Do me a favor and tell your father that we're going to exterminate every last member of your species. Got it? Sliding her leg free, she kneed him in the balls. He doubled over in pain, immediately releasing his grip to grab his injured bits. Snatching the gun from the ground, Lexi ran down the alley, away from his curses and threats of revenge. Once home, she'd showered, unable to wash away the last of his scent from her body. As she'd fallen asleep that night, safe in her guarded condo, she'd pulled the covers close, imagining it was his strong muscles cocooning her. That had been 6 years ago. Lexi still thought of that night each and every day. If she was honest, it was probably why she rarely took lovers. Other men's hands didn't elicit the strong response that Jordan's calloused ones had. No man's lips were the right combination of firm and plushy. No one scraped their fangs across her lower lip ever so softly. It was an impossible dilemma, and one that her father was becoming quite frustrated with. He'd visited her earlier this evening, his stern voice lifting into a yell when she informed him that she wouldn't marry Lincoln. I don't love him, father, she'd stated, hands fisted at her sides. I refuse to marry a man I don't love. He's a valiant soldier and deserves to find someone who can care for him. Don't take that choice away from both of us. Victor had scoffed, his features contorting into an angry mask under his silver hair. You will marry Lincoln, and you will bear a child. This is not a negotiation, Alexis. I expect a grandchild by this time next year, or I'll give you to the vampires myself. Alexis sucked in a breath, hurt flooding her from his words. Father, she whispered. No, he said, slicing the air with his hand. I've let you run free for too long, Alexis. You are the daughter of the lycan sovereign, and with that comes responsibility. You have everything you've ever wanted. Guards keep you safe with every passing day," he said, jerking his head toward her front door, where lycan soldiers stood on the other side. "It's time you repaid your debt to our society." Lexi felt her eyes well and struggled to tamp down the emotion. "How dare you presume to think you can control my life?" she said through clenched teeth. "I fight with our soldiers, combing the streets, protecting them from vampire, human, and demon. That is how I will accomplish my duty. You must let me follow my own path." Victor sighed, shaking his head and rubbing his forehead with his fingers, his shoulders hunched with resignation. "You are just like your mother," he muttered. "So willful. It's what got her killed. I won't let the same happen to you." "It won't, Father." "No," he interrupted, holding up his hand, palm facing her. "I've made my decision. You will marry Lincoln next month. The decree will be announced next week." Lexi thrust up her chin. "I won't let you barter me away like cattle," she said, fury swarming her veins. "You will, or I will throw you out on the street," was Victor's cold reply. "You have 1 week, Alexis. Don't let me down." Stalking to the door, he slammed it behind him. Now, here she was, staring out the cold glass, miles apart from her father, both literally and figuratively. He lived in a large home in the center of the city, but Lexi preferred living in her high-rise condo. Rubbing her upper arms, she admitted that she was lost. In lust with a man she was destined to hate. Alone and dependent upon her father. One thing was clear. Lexi had to take control of her life. There was no other option.
You can listen to the rest of the book in the Tempt Romance audiobooks app, available on the App Store and Google Play. The link to the book is in the description. Discover even more bestsellers and exclusive stories updated weekly, only in Tempt Romance audiobooks.